Hey, I wanted to upload my best single segment run of this game so far. I realize this is my own game, so it's not that impressive that I'm good at it, but I've been playing it kind of a lot, and I decided to commentate because this game doesn't really have sound effects or music. It was really a shorter project I made over a holiday, and I've subsequently played it way more than I anticipated. I think I find the gameplay so addictive because the dash on the ground gives you a boost with no cap. So there's always something to be doing to increase your speed. And by single segment run, I guess I'm not talking about a speed run, but a score run. This game's levels are about going as far as you can in a set 40 seconds. You could in theory speed run it, but you'd just be optimizing the tutorial levels and menus, which doesn't seem very fun to me. So one of the weird things about this game is that you basically always want to be holding space. Space is how you charge the trick meter, and releasing space lets you do a trick. Now I really like the trick system in this game because it does two things. It fills your turbo gauge down at the bottom, and it resets your double jump. Now, between that reset of the double jump and the fact that a dash prevents you from falling, you really have a lot of control over where you are vertically on the screen. And I also like the fact that a trick is the release of a button rather than the press of a button, but I think it probably was a mistake to do it that way. This basically means that players are holding space the entire time, and maybe I could have fixed that by doing something like you can overcharge a trick, so that would mean that players have to time when they start charging, and they wouldn't just hold space the entire time, they'd start holding space shortly before they went to use a trick. However, players already tell me that the timing of tricks after a double jump is pretty tricky, so I don't think it would have been a good idea to make that trickier. Probably the best solution would be to make the trick gauge charge automatically, or maybe you pick up a collectible that helps charge the trick gauge, or maybe your airtime charges the trick gauge, and then maybe you can do a trick with the press of a button. Oh, looks like we're gonna start what players think is the hardest level in the game. The key to this is really just if you slam into the bumper, and slamming's great, by the way. I want to talk about that in a second. If you slam into the bumper, it'll bounce you up higher, so it'll give you better airtime. But the timing on that is pretty tricky for players, so maybe I should have had two bumpers right next to each other so you could time it better, but hindsight. Also, if anyone can figure out how to get players to read things, that would be great. But yeah, if you see me moving quickly downward, that's because I'm slamming. It's funny, later on in the game, I'm going to introduce snow piles that you can slam into, and I did that in part to give the slam some utility, but the more I play the game, the more I find myself slamming all the time to try to stay near the ground, because dashing in air doesn't give you that speed bonus that dashing on the ground gives you. When you see the background change like this, that means I'm entering turbo mode. When the turbo gauge fills, it gives you infinite dash right up until the turbo gauge runs out. But there are some things you can do to keep the turbo gauge from running out. Mostly you can keep tricking, because tricking fills the turbo gauge, especially tricking into rings will give you that extra bonus. But also, as long as you're in turbo mode, anything that would fill your dash meter, that would let you dash longer, like the crystals, or the floating bag obstacles, or even hitting bumpers, those will help refill your turbo meter instead, because you have infinite dash. Oh, I make some mistakes in this level, but I always do on all my runs, because you go so fast because there's so much ground to boost on. Something else you might have noticed is that I tend to go through bumpers in turbo mode, whereas you will likely be bumped upward by them if this is your first time playing. I had forgotten this until I played obsessively and finally decided to go back and check the code, but evidently I programmed it so that bumpers only affect you in turbo mode if you're below a certain speed. Below that speed, they will both bump you upward and give you a speed boost. So they are beneficial in a way, though annoying because they make it hard to dash on the ground. If you're going through them, they're not giving you a speed boost so far as I can tell, but that's okay because it lets you stay near the ground where you can get a better speed boost anyway. And it's a pretty good indication that you're gonna get a good score. Also worth noting is that slopes give you a speed boost even if you just pass through them rather than go down them. That was not deliberate, but it's also not surprising. The programming for this game was kind of sloppy. I suspect I just put in something like, if ground detector under the player overlaps a slope, increase speed. So when you pass through a slope, that ground detector overlaps a slope. I don't regret that. I think the only thing I regret is the trick meter thing I brought up earlier, because at this point I'm really kind of endeared to all the other weird quirks. Oh, what else is there to talk about? Well, something I didn't bring up in the original devlog is that I deliberately made it so you can watch the time change over the course of the game, so that it starts in daytime or maybe even morning, and then moves to evening and then nighttime. This is an idea I stole from Kirby's Adventure. If I were to redo this though, I think I'd do more of these levels in the Western cyberpunk aesthetic, because that setting seems to fit a robot buffalo better than, like, the castle level. The castle's the one that bothers me the most, actually. I also might want the city to look a little more sci-fi, cyber, I don't know. But something I'm really happy with is the naming convention of everything. You know, the High-Low Metro, the Slow Snow Chateau. Speaking of which, when I originally conceived the character, I think I was going for, like, Robofalo, like a combination of robot and buffalo, and I still am trying to do that pun, but now I pronounce it Robofalo because it fits the naming convention. Robofalo goes to the High-Low Metro. And my headcanon, or I guess the real canon, because I'm the author, is that her name is Fallow, and she's a robot, so she's Robofalo. And here we've won the game, which is just winning this race to prove we're not slow like he said we were. And now I want to show off some of my real high scores right now. These are my individual run high scores, but unfortunately I didn't film them, so I can't put up a segmented run. Take my word for it or not. But yeah, I'm really proud of this game, and I like that the story is just that a silly little robot buffalo is annoyed that she was called slow. It's like a low stakes light kind of plot for a low stakes light kind of game, and I really like trying to go fast.